think the Yemeni kid in my basement has low testosterone.
What makes you say that? Is that the literally just bread that you feed them?
It's the cone on his head. He keeps bumping into me every time he wants to go out for a walk.
They do that. That is a common problem I hear from people who keep those.
Okay. Yes, you are on the right show. This is Civil Offense. Welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Ahmed Mlih. We usually don't start this way, but just thought I'd add that in because it was nice.
Should we explain what you mean?
I tried saying it was about my dog, and I tried saying my dog had low testosterone. Because of his lack of spatial awareness, and there was this guy I know that linked a study between low testosterone and spatial awareness, and I thought, okay, it would be funny to start the show that way, but then I did it, and I forgot to record beforehand, so I just start, and I don't tell Ashton about this, I just say, hey, my dog has low testosterone, and here we are now. This is where we are, and I am with the Skinwalker spotter himself.
Absolutely, gotta spot him, gotta see him coming.
Yeah, so today we're talking about the importance of culture and building it, and we have something interesting for during the show. So yeah, I'm just going to get straight into it, but stick around and you will be surprised at some point. But to summarize, everybody's talking about this new Sam Smith video, so if you aren't aware, sorry. Anyway, guys, go to ahmedmlih.com and sign up for my email list for the latest updates on everything that's going on with the show. Go to check out some new Civil Offense merch at etsy.com/shop/zbigdogz. That's zbigdogz, zbigdogz. Check out the Civil Offense podcast on Rumble, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And remember to like, comment, and share the show. Let's get straight into it. So, first of all, I just wanted to discuss what's the importance of a pro-liberty culture?
The importance is that not everyone is going to read theory, so you're not going to get 50% of the population to read theory. You're not going to get a large amount of people to have this deeper understanding of libertarian ethics or economics or anything like that. So these cultural narratives support these ideologies in such a way where even if you don't know the ins and outs of everything, you see it as a normal, and thus you support it. This is the case, and it has been instituted for such a long time through the use of public schools, through the use of publicly funded universities, and I would not directly say through the funding of artists themselves, but in some cases through that, such as like state grants or like state tax credits or payment towards museums and art programs, where you have this normalization of the state of the world that we have come to today, and the normalization of democracy equals good, left wing equals bad, right wing equals bad on each side. And it's just like the problems of government are actually just when the other party is in power. And that's a cultural narrative on both sides of the issue. But if you have a pro-liberty culture, then you would see that self-ownership is the thing that's important, and not what tyrant is over your lives. But that's where I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention the schooling aspect of it, because definitely, I mean, whether it be schooling or media or whatever, a lot of this stuff is done at a young age in the developmental years, with socialization, to sort of, get children thinking a certain way, obviously, so that when they get older, they'll start supporting statism, things like that, things that support the state and all that, and obviously see democracy as this thing to love and see as free, and even you'll hear like, honestly, I had this professor that said, like, guys, what are the top issues right now? Like, what do people care about right now? And people were saying like, oh, basic human rights. And then she goes, right, democracy is one of the biggest issues right now, polling with people. And, obviously that comes from like the corporate press putting that out as information. And then you see students consuming that. And then you see a professor coming out and reinforcing that in people's minds. So obviously you see like sort of like it just all comes back together in how much they want to push this sort of stuff. So yeah, like pushing back against this, what does like the pro-liberty culture look like today then? Like how much do you see this in institutions at all in the first place, and sort of like what's the current state of it?
For a pro-liberty culture, I don't see that too often. There's a few, like in the like different sort of medias of culture. You have music, movies, video games, everything of the sort. I'd say music, there is it's mostly things that edge towards liberty, things that are close to it, peripheral, one could say. And I'm not necessarily a music buff myself, but I know there's lots of songs against like the uniformity of public schooling. There's lots of songs against just like against the man, fight against the rage against the machine, that sort of aspect. But really, when you look into it, they do not directly oppose these sorts of authoritarian ideas or link themselves deeply with libertarian ideas. And I think that's largely because you don't have too many libertarians making culture of the past. In the more present, I know they exist. I don't necessarily know of them because we do not necessarily control any real sphere of influence when it comes to this cultural battle. It is more between the left and the right within the country, where you have I don't even know them, but like Blair White being in a rap video with some like conservative rapper or something
Tom
like
McDonald.
that. Yeah, Tom McDonald. And I'd say that's like a win for conservatives, sure, in some way, but not necessarily a win for liberty.
I'd say actually with Tom McDonald, he does do some good stuff other than just like say some conservative talking points, because he has this song called "The System," which I actually thought was like pretty good in a lot of this, like actually promoting liberty in a lot of ways. And yeah, there are certain like messages in his songs that are, you know, in other songs that are like probably like I think it was people are so stupid, or maybe something like fake woke, like where he talks about he does like support like police. So yeah, there are certain problems like within, you know, like, okay, problems for like people that are interested in liberty in certain aspects of it. But there are others that are like, okay, well, he actually is like speaking against the current, like what's going on right now. And just also like within society, how it's controlled. I mean, not just like literally, oh, the left is the problem. He also discusses like, okay, well, it's actually like the structure of society right now is a problem. So I mean, I do think overall that's good, even if they're like, you know, despite any flaws within it.
Right. And I'd say there's more space in, I'd say, more narrative content. So movies, video games, books, or like novels, but not just like Austrian theory books. But in that sort of space, I think you can infuse it into the story. But what's important is that you're actually good at writing those things before you try to start to infuse them. Otherwise, you're going to end up like the skinwalkers that we see in the present, the parasitic skinwalkers that get the IP to a certain piece of content, say, just off the top of my head, just like Scooby-Doo. They get their hands on a piece of content. They aren't talented themselves, but they're given like millions, billions of dollars, or say like with the Lord of the Rings, and then they start to infuse their values into it, but it comes off in such a way where the content itself is of a low quality, where there is just the message there, where it's like, even if the movie is bad, the critics are going to praise it and everything of the sort just because the message is there, because that is really what is important over the original piece of beautiful content.
I mean, this is what you see with the reinforcement of like woke culture, and it's all, in a lot of ways, you know, that aspect of it has been doing a lot of taking ground in the culture today. And it seems like, you know, a lot of younger people, despite there, you know, being plenty of people at certain events, like, you know, conservative or libertarian otherwise, I mean, there are also pretty like plenty of young people, like, you know, your standard college student is going to believe in the DIE, like diversity, inclusion, and equity, just like at face value, and say like, you know, oh yeah, you know, I really care about this intersectionality stuff and all that, because that totally matters so much. And yeah, and then they're the ones that like are like, oh yeah, democracy is important to me and basic human rights, and we need to force people to put their labor into giving things to other people. So yeah, maybe they don't support basic human rights, but yeah, looking at not the pro-liberty culture, but looking at the dominant culture today, which I would say in a lot of ways, unless you disagree, is that what would you say really embodies that?
The dominant culture today, it would be the death cult of wokeness, which, as you said, is diversity, inclusion, and equity. And I think what can it really be defined by? Because it's not that like wokeness is this like free floating leftist concept, as I said before, but the primary thing that people like to think about when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, or diversity, inclusion, and equity, is the victim hierarchy. How you have the most oppressed people at the bottom, and then you have the most like majoritarian population at the top, and then just like it's important to flip this hierarchy on its head to try to counteract all these cultural forces and social forces and supposedly governmental forces that keep the oppressed at the bottom, and treat them in every way you can as if they are on the top, or treat them to be on the top, in terms of societal value, one could say. But this, in effect, just enforces the general culture of the persecution of the majority through usually just individual means, not necessarily through governmental means, though that is somewhat different when it comes to, say, affirmative action in law, or when it comes to hate crimes in law, or anything of the sort, possibly through the actions of juries. But that's even calling it a bit of a stretch in the current state now. And to try to think about the future, of course, would be fear-mongering and the slippery slope fallacy. So let's not do that at all. Let's not think far ahead.
I mean, to me, it seems like, because you mentioned these sorts of things that are being enshrined in law, I do think legislation as like a solution to problems is something that like it is seen as more common today. I don't know. I mean, like not compared to like, I'd say like hundreds of years ago, but like within like American history, for example, like it just seems like a lot more today. People want to start placing their values into the law, and like forcing people to live a certain way. And when it comes to like hate speech, for example, like I think there was some congresswoman that had put something in about like not using certain terminology. I don't remember the exact bill. It was something like that.
I think I remember the bill you're talking about. It's like, if a, and I may be wrong about this, but I think it was like, if a shooting happens and it was inspired by like racist speech online, then the racist speaker is like held responsible for it in some certain way or form.
Did happen in the UK already.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's already happening elsewhere. And also, I mean, like even like the it was the equality. I mean, I think they might have just called it the Equality Act or whatever it was, like where they want to put it into the Civil Rights Act, that like you also can't discriminate based on gender ideology or gender, whatever they call it, expression or whatever it is, right? Gender, like pronouns and all that. I don't know. But basically they wanted it to be that your gender identity wouldn't be discriminated against, right? Like in the same way that sex can't be discriminated against under the Civil Rights Act, right? So like they want to sort of like make it so that like they're expanding this thing to where, people have even less of a choice in who they associate with. They want to take away people's free association today.
Yeah. Are we going to go full Libertarian Party of New Hampshire and just...
Republicans just want to whine about wokeness. We have solutions. Repeal the Civil Rights Act, or it was abolish.
Wasn't there more to the tweet than that? Because I thought that was a list. I thought that was like the first entry of the list.
I don't know. I've seen memes where that's just like literally the thing that's put in. I mean, okay. I don't know if you really want to go into that, but I'm just saying, like, I mean, look at what's happening today and look at how free association is being gone after, and just think like, maybe it benefits the state when free association's limited. Like maybe that's something that helps them and not like average people. Think about where average people would be today if free association were free. I don't think you'd see that sort of discrimination that you're thinking is going to happen immediately or even in the long term. If anything, I think it was like Orrin McIntyre, and he was speaking with Will Chamberlain. He's like, oh, libertarians, like they think it's going to help them, but it's actually going to like benefit or like benefit the woke crowd because white people are going to be the ones that are discriminated against. It's like, okay, I guess. Like, I mean, don't deal with companies that are discriminating against white people. Exactly. Like, why would you want to prop them up like that? So that's your counter argument right there.
Or just like even think about like the social consequences if a business is just like, okay, the gay cake baking shop or whatever it was called, what gay person or what trans person would want to go there. What gay person or trans person has gone there to get a cake baked for them, other than the ones that have specifically gone after the Supreme Court cases? Like, none. You don't want to support that business because, like, they are against your values, so don't support businesses that are against your values. And if someone is going to be racist towards you, go ahead and cancel them on Twitter. Like, if that is really such a issue, and I would say it was, if, like, a business is just like, no shirt, no shoes, no African Americans allowed, if a business really did that, then that would be pretty bad. Yeah, that would be cancelable on Twitter. I'd say that's a worthy canceling. But that doesn't mean that they should be forced to, with the might of the government, gun to the back of their head, because they still hold these racist beliefs. So you're still financially benefiting them through your business. So don't. It would be better for you to know that and then to not do it.
All right, so this story was just 6 days ago. It says Colorado baker loses appeal over transgender birthday cake. The Christian baker Jack Phillips maintained that that the cake he creates are a form of speech and plans to appeal. So it was the Colorado baker who won a partial U.S. Supreme Court victory after refusing to make a gay couple's wedding cake, and they just hate this guy because of his Christian faith. Lost and appealed this Thursday. Sorry, whatever Thursday it was. This was the week of January 27th. In his latest legal fight involving his rejection of a request for a birthday cake celebrating a gender transition. And as far as I remember this story, basically, this trans person came to him and wanted a cake that was in the colors pink, blue, and white. I believe it was, if I'm remembering correctly. I can just look through this. So, which was to be pink and blue frosting. So basically, the Colorado Court of Appeals ruled that the cake Autumn Scardina requested from Jack Phillips and a Masterpiece Cake Shop, which was to be pink with blue frosting, is not a form of speech. So basically, he's compelled to do this sort of thing. If somebody wants a cake with pink and blue frosting, it's not inherently expressive, and any message or symbolism it provides to an observer would not be attributed to the baker.
Yeah. And I'd say it's really flawed.
Can I just say they really hate this guy? They just keep going after him. It seems intentional. No, hold on. What trans person wants to go to the guy that rejected a gay wedding cake? You had to have wanted a lawsuit.
Yeah, exactly. They're all activists. They're all in this for that fight. This trans person was probably supported by whatever organization that then filed a lawsuit. I doubt this trans person filed the lawsuit themselves. But this issue is not being fought on the grounds of libertarian ethics, of course. It is being fought in the grounds of U.S. law, where the real argument would be freedom of association between the man and the customer. Whereas, in U.S. law, freedom of association has already been abolished, so you don't truly own your property because the government has say on how you can use that property with another person. And to circle back to a defense of freedom of association, ownership is having the just say over the use of your property, over the use of said property. But if you are forced by the government to use a property in a way that you do not wish, then you do not truly own that property. So the acceptance of freedom of association is the acceptance of ownership rights over your property and in some cases over your body. And it is a shame that racists exist to own property. It is a shame that racism exists in general, but that nevertheless does not negate the ownership of property and the property claims that they have in it of themselves. So to get back to the point I was saying, and I've kind of lost it here, but the legal fight that's happening is just one of speech, where it's just my cake is speech, so please protect it, please. I have my religious values and I just want to speak the way that I want to, and I don't want to speak this way. And that's really just a flawed argument from libertarian ethics, as I was getting at. But I don't think the Supreme Court is going to really give him a better answer, because the last time it came around, they just had an issue, or they ruled on an issue of how he was being persecuted by the system, and how there was some system errors or some system flaws where it shouldn't have gotten to this level, and they did some things wrong in the procedure rather than the actual meat of the case being speech.
Yeah, so I wanted to check in on the crowd that's making this their own culture, right? You know, these people that would want to go after a baker like this, or maybe push for their own activism. So I have a video here today that some people have been talking about online, and I've been seeing some like reactions made to it, and we're gonna be reacting to it today. And a little funny story, I pasted it in a chat for Ashton to watch, and it looks like he's watched through the whole thing, even though I just took a screenshot of like the middle part and watched a few clips, but I didn't really like want to look through the whole thing. But now I'm gonna have to. So I'm sure he hates me for that. Because I didn't tell him anything. I was just kind of like, hey man, here's the video we're gonna review, and then he watches through the whole thing. He's like, I hated every second of that. It's like I hated every second of that, and I was like, oh, you watched it?
Now imagine this video gets flagged for sexually explicit content.
Yeah, I could imagine that would happen.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting choice of undergarment.
Yep. Yes, indeed. That's the only good part.
Yeah.
It's the funniest part.
The hate crime.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's that. Oh dude.
Yeah, there's that. In line with the song, with the beat of the song. Oh, and it gets worse too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know what's about to come. Yep. Literally.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Cheers, boys.
Drink up. Get yourself some liquid courage there.
How much of this is permissible on a normal YouTube account?
Absolutely none of it. Especially not the bottle throw. You understand why I hated you now?
Yeah, okay. I saw that. Is this supposed to be seductive?
I think that's the idea.
It's giving that light skin stare.
Okay, here's my thing. 1 to 10, how is he attractive in the gay community? Like, what is his score in the gay community? Because, like, to straight women, I'm guessing he's like a 3 tops.
Well, that's why he's gay.
So, like, to gay men, what the f*** is he? Because he's, like, pretending that he's, like, this, like, hot person, like, intrinsically. I'm guessing, like, really the value in him is, like, for his celebrity. And that's the idea of, like, all those people chasing him, because I don't think he would get that many gay men to chase him unless he's, like, some 10 in the gay community, apparently, if it weren't for him paying them. But I have a secondary question. How many of those, like, backup dancers and everything like that have been to, like, a drag queen story hour? That's my question, because you had a few drag queens there. You had a few, like, transgender individuals there, many gay men. Or did he just like collect all of the degenerates of like a pride parade? Because like all the piss fetish stuff and just the sexually explicit content, that's the worst of like what you see at a pride parade. Hopefully there's some worse things.
It's not the worst thing you see there.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. It's just, I mean, it is for YouTube. I bet he wanted to release a more sexually explicit version, but he's just like
the Lil Nas X shower scene.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so like going on that though, actually, yeah, that you could draw parallels between the two, because Lil Nas X did drop a video where he was, as Andrew Tate loves to say, twerking on the devil. You know, like Lil Nas X.
I've only seen the twerking on the devil part. I haven't seen the music video.
It's well, that's how it goes. And he markets himself a lot to kids. So obviously dropping a video like that is gonna do a little bit of socialization there in a preferable way to these people. And by these people, I just mean the ones that are going out and making videos like this. You know, whatever your preference is, if you're just doing this, Yeah, I don't know that it's best to market that to kids, but we have Sam Smith, and people are saying, it's homophobic to go after him for this because, what if a woman were doing it? You'd accept that. You'd be fine with that. Okay, well, first of all, not the best thing to be making as a music video, but even then, I mean, yeah, he's fat and he's sweaty, and I really don't like that. So yeah, you're right. I'm not a fan of a big sweaty man doing that kind of stuff on video. If I had to pick, it would be the woman, and that is just because I am a man.
Yeah, exactly. And even that, in the case of that, Lizzo exists. He's just like a fatter, worse male Lizzo.
If I had to pick, still Lizzo, but still Lizzo's not great either. I don't like that.
Exactly. Like, we don't like that sexually explicit content either, but also...
And people are going to say, oh, it's just because she's fat. If it were a skinny woman... Well, yeah, still, the skinny woman is preferable to the fat woman. It's still preferable. You just keep saying, oh, but if it were better, you'd like it more. Yeah.
If it were to appeal to a straight male more, you'd like it more.
Of course. What is this, Gamergate? But, so also Sam Smith, a little bit about where he's at with his career right now. Sam Smith called for BRIT Awards to go gender neutral, and he says it's a shame for no women to be nominated. And he called for the award show to do away with the male and female categories because the men were the ones that won when they put it in that way. So, I mean, I don't know, Sam. I guess you're calling for a little bit of equity here, just so women can get in on it.
So wait, what do they have currently? Do they have music divided into like male category and female category? And he's calling for the end of that, or is it the opposite?
So it says singer Sam Smith called for an end to separate awards for men and women, but lamented this year that no women were nominated for the now gender neutral Artist of the Year category for the BRIT Award. So there is a gender neutral Artist of the Year category, but he was upset that no women were put in for this. He identifies as non-binary and called for the awards to not make distinctions based upon gender back in 2021. I look forward to a time where award shows can be reflective of the society we live in. Let's celebrate everybody, regardless of gender, race, ability, sexuality, and class, he said. So, but in his view, what society is this, and what sort of things is he looking for more representation on? And is it really reflective of where society's at?
I think it's the same sort of thing that pundits say when they talk about our democracy. They don't really mean like the ends of a democratic vote. They really mean their values being enforced. If they lose, it's because our democracy was subverted. If they win, it's our democracy coming into fruition. So it is a matter of they view a different cultural... I don't know if it's a hegemonic force or it's a substrate. I don't know if it's coming from above or below, but I would say, from our perspective, I would say it's above. Cultural hegemonic force trying to overtake the minds of everybody in a society, in the sense that they want complete adherence to the ideology. They want complete adherence, and I wouldn't say... No, to a degree, it's straight up worship of this is a good. Anybody who views this as a bad is evil and should be absolutely ostracized from society. Anybody who wants to criticize Sam Smith is homophobic, and we're going to use the loosest definition of that term when we are defending the use of the term, but we're going to infuse it with the most emotional vigor and hatred and meaning when we are accusing others of it. Like, because homophobic, when they express it, they simply mean it as hate of homosexuals, that you are a terrible person who hates homosexuals. But when they try to defend the term, it's just like, well, criticizing behavior is homophobic. It's just like, you have so many different definitions of the word that you are absolutely degrading the meaning of it. And to flip the argument on its head, by degrading the meaning of this word that meant so much to the gay people of the past, you are being homophobic yourself in this regard. And you can do the same thing with racist. You can do the same thing, kind of less so with transphobic, but with all of these different terms that they like to throw around so much. And you see a similar parody in the halls of government.
So I just thought of this. The people that are saying this is homophobic, don't they know he identifies as non-binary?
It's true. That's
How
true.
can he
I
be
guess
gay?
homophobic's the catch-all for
How can he be
pride, I
gay? But how
suppose.
can he be gay?
Yeah.
Homo means, same. So
So
what are they saying about his sex?
What would the I guess pansexual? It would have to be pansexual because it can't be bisexual.
You're
Because
panphobic.
bisexual is like a two genders thing. But here's the thing, and this is just like absolutely tangential side point. The people there's like LGBT infighting because the Bs don't like the Ps because Bs are like, yeah, there's a sect of them where it's just like still two genders or whatever, and then there are two sects of the Ps. The Ps who say, well, two genders can mean two of the variety of genders, so it can be female and non-binary, or it could be male and non-binary, or male and female. So like that's what bisexual actually means, or the other sect of the Ps where it's just like Bs and Ps mean the same thing, where bisexuals just mean you'll date anybody, because there's this contradiction of terms with like the two genders thing and everything like that.
I remember when I was a kid and it was just LGB. Let's go back to the good old days, man.
It's weird how L is in the front, to be honest, because I don't think anyone throughout history, or like, it's been a very minor problem of the people who've had a problem with L's, because it's literally just like, oh boy, a donut, something that I like. Two donuts? Wow! And that's the exact parody when it comes to lesbian women, where that's straight guy fantasy, and obviously they have a criticism of that where it's like, oh, you're sexualizing and fetishizing us. And to a degree, yes, men are pigs in that regard, absolutely. But I'd say gay men got the most shit from history when it came to religious persecution and everything like that. So I think it should be the GLBs, if anything. But I don't think that's
okay.
too
But
popular,
today, the P's and the Q's will say that the G's, the gays, are just basically like the straight equivalent of the community.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh, they're the fine ones. They're okay. Like
You gays aren't acting queer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they haven't worn a mask in long enough. So, I mean, like, if anything, who has the worst deal today? Like, probably the lesbians. Like, just because, like, you see a lot of them talking about their spaces getting invaded when it comes to like, they have problems when some of them have problems when it comes to transgenders, and they're like, oh, well, our spaces are feeling invaded. We're not having like women only spaces or female whatever. Same thing, but yeah, it's pretty much just like this infighting going on. You can see sort of like the intersectionality taking hold in this community and saying like, okay, well, we're going to start imposing even stranger things.
Yeah, the fight between the L's and the T's is interesting with the whole like TERF movement, everything like that. And I do want to say, TERFs are not the allies of non-insane people, because they just root their opposition of transgender stuff to their hatred of men. It is all rooted in the hatred of men. So TERFs aren't necessarily allies in any regard of non-insane people, or like people who are against the woke death cult. I'll add that.
So speaking of queer allies, is it smart for libertarians to help conservatives in their cultural pursuits?
I would say conservative goals are not libertarian goals necessarily. With liberty, you can have many cultural, social goals, such as friends, family, community, everything like that. You want the value and enshrinement of those. You want a community which you can call home, which you identify with culturally and historically, everything like that. And you can do that within a libertarian framework of ethics and society. But I think it is absolutely not necessarily absolutely. There are many things which are a misallocation of resources, effort, and time. And one of those things would be, or like a few cultural battles that are being fought right now in the culture war or the info war, are some of those things that are misallocations. I think one of the things that's not a misallocation is the transing of the kids, because hey, if we achieve libertarianism, but everyone's dead because they've committed, or 40% of the population is dead because they've committed suicide, that's pretty bad. Or even higher, probably, with the increased rate of false positives that are probably happening within the younger transgender population. and I say transgender in this regard, not to say that trans people don't exist or anything like that, but just like a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old, a 7-year-old cannot be trans. So calling them transgender is not really the actual meaning of the term. It's such a mess. But some of the cultural fights that I don't think are worth fighting are necessarily like not fighting in the way that they think it is. Like one of the culture battles between the right and the left is like back the blue and everything like that. And there I'd say fall more on the left position. We should always fall on the side of like truth when it comes to any incident, but on the basis for any incident of police interaction is usually a law that violates rights. So any sort of stopping based off like drug crime or anything like selling cigarettes on the side of the street or anything like that, there's always that basis for police interactions, and those could always end poorly.
Yeah. Speaking of which, there was this video that was being shared about these cops like beating up this guy. Like they're like, get on the ground, like, yay, get on the ground, get on. But as they're doing it, they're kicking him, right? And they're like, stop, like, they just kept doing it. This was some guy, like, apparently, like, there was more context added in the comments. Like, he had shot at them outside, like, at their car and almost hit one of them. But still, they went inside, and once he was
Tyree Nichols or a different
no, this is a different guy.
Okay.
Like, this is like some store he went back into, and then they went in there. And then they were like, what's your problem? And then they were basically like, as soon as he gave up, he was like, okay, take me in. They were still beating him to the ground. Like, they didn't care. They weren't like, okay, he's no longer a threat, we'll just take him in. They had a personal problem with him, and they were just doing that because, they feel like they're entitled to do so. So, I mean, like, and you'll probably see more of the back the blue people be like, oh, well, they were shot at, their lives were in danger. They had absolutely a right to do that to that guy. But no, I mean, like, no. So there are a lot of ways in which, like, the back the blue people, like, it just inevitably, like, you're back the blue pilled, in a lot of ways, like, because you just don't want to see the real arguments for why these people are really pigs. But anyway, I was going to mention, speaking of like conservative cultural pursuits, I know the Daily Wire was doing like a Daily Wire Kids thing. So this is why I asked about this, because they are doing something in which they're creating a children's entertainment. Basically, one of their shows was like Chipchilla, and it was about homeschooled chinchillas, and it was supposed to, well, I guess they're still doing that. It's supposed to like promote their values, right? And I mean, homeschooling is something, we'd like to see more of, as opposed to like public education. Obviously, we've went over this before, but obviously, like state running education is a terrible thing, because if you don't want people to overthrow you, obviously you're going to want to be the ones instructing them, right? Right. But anyway, I just wonder, if there's an episode in which they got Matt Walsh featuring, and he's just talking about executing drug dealers, So maybe it's not the best idea to ally with conservatives when that's their values.
Yeah, considering how Matt Walsh is stuck with his take, and it's just like, we've gone too soft on these. We need like public executions and hangings and everything like that, and we need to beat people with a stick for stealing or having a small possession of drugs, is not rooted in libertarian ethics. In case anyone was wondering, that's not really a libertarian thing. But
go national conservatism, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I think even many conservatives are not sympathetic to that view. They don't view it as the same thing, and in some ways they would think like, I mean, considering they usually like to play it only in somewhat like of a leftist way, where it's like the individual drug user is not that bad, but the drug dealer, that's an evil person and everything like that. And to some degree, because of the market that we're in, that can be the case, because the market is dominated through violence and force rather than through any sort of arbitration or means of resolving disputes. So you have gangs protecting drug dealers, and then you have gang wars with each other, and then you have the FBI come in to split up those gang wars, but really they just create different territories, so like a bunch of different gangs and everything like that. In the past, you had the East Side and the West Side fighting each other. FBI infiltrated those organizations, and then split them up. So then you have the Northeast side fighting the Northwest side, fighting the Southeast side and Southwest side, and then split that up even more. So these entire cities are consumed by conflict because the borders are everywhere now. But It's just problems of government intervention. Nevertheless, each time it's a problem of government intervention, and to try to get people to wake up to that, I think, is sometimes a Herculean task, but nevertheless worth trying for some people, and then for the people that you can't convince, well, we don't need the majority.
I do want to start going into sort of like, our own creations, or sort of like how people within the liberty movement would create and promote their own culture. Let's go into promotion first. How is a pro-liberty culture promoted?
Pro-liberty culture is promoted first by creating media, and this can come in many forms. I was talking about like narrative media, as well as music. In regards of music, I think there are only so many ways that you can really infuse the message without being too hard-handed with it. But that may just be my ignorance of.
Well, I mean, like for example, Eric July made ISOM, the comic book that was pretty much apolitical. Like there wasn't really any politics being expressed in that, and the sales went crazy, and it reached a broader audience than just his audience. I would take it because it wasn't about just showing something that was like inherently political or trying to show off his ideology in any way. He wasn't just stamping his ideology on it and saying, here's this product. He was giving something of value to people regarding entertainment, and people were just sick of like seeing that happen within DC and Marvel, that they were just like, okay, you know what? I'm going to give this a shot.
But I would say that isn't necessarily a libertarian culture, but that's a political culture. And that has a space too. I think that should be definitely a larger thing. But considering that we're such a small minority, we should create some apolitical culture, of course, and then some culture that's infused with libertarianism or libertarian ethics. And in the narrative space, you have to first get good at narratives. You have to know like the 3-act structure, hero's journey, all the different ones, Chekhov's gun, and then the more advanced writing styles and like how to actually craft a narrative that weaves throughout and is going to stand the test of time, and is going to be a great creation in and of itself. And in that creation, you can, once you've actually gotten good, you can then infuse narratives and have it be narratively relevant, plot relevant in a way that is not just like, here's what you should believe, reader, believe this, because in no way does that help libertarian culture.
Well, I will say though, real quick, like I don't think it's something completely separate to say, oh, make it apolitical and also like, make content that infuses libertarian values. Like it's more about, the way you put it in, the way you're embedding that. You can put it in stories and sort of make the lesson about something that would align with libertarian ethics. But that doesn't mean that you're just stamping it on and showing people like, hey, this is libertarian ethics and this is what it's about and this is why it's believed and all that and so on and so forth, right? It's just more so like creating stories that give the readers an inspiration to think a certain way about things and about, let's say, coercion or force or, living together with other people, like how to treat people and all that. So it's more so about like that. It's you can do that in stories without making it at all about libertarianism, like it directly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'd say like one of the pitfalls of some narratives, not that they were like intentionally supposed to be libertarian, but there are many narratives that speak about government corruption or like government abuses, governmental overreach, and everything like that, tyranny. But many times they just draw the line and stop at government corruption, whereas what is true is that it is the very nature of the state to expand in such a way to become tyrannical, to become more involved in people's lives, and to become a monster that can very, very rarely be vanquished except for the main character of the story who restores the government to time or through whatever means the specific story takes place in.
1984 is going to be more effective than Ancapistan always. That's just my point. Like as in like, don't just name your stuff that. Don't just say like, oh, this is ANCAP whatever. Like this is libertarian whatever. Don't do that. Like don't stamp your ideology on that seems like it would work more so if you're like communist or something. Like it seems like it seems to be more effective from that angle, but I just don't think it's effective from this perspective.
Yeah. And I think like one of the ways that libertarian ideas in a different context could be infused is to give examples of to our minarchist friends a more limited government, but to our ANCAP brothers in arms, a ANCAP society, what a stateless society could look like, everything like that. But I think the problem is that is too much culture shock from the society that we experience today, that it would just be viewed as just straight up propaganda, where it's just like, you say the stateless society could work, but that's fantasy land. So all you're doing is confirming that ANCAP only works in fantasy land. But I'd say maybe a telling of a story of places that actually existed, like Acadia. What was the other one in Cospaia? Cospaia, telling stories like based in those areas or relevant to those areas could be more interesting. Where it's like, what, this place was like, sure, like Acadia, like this place was like owned by the king, but they never really paid taxes. They didn't really have a governmental structure, and they were the most prosperous colony in North America for like per capita or anything like that. And then you have Cospaia, which was completely privately owned by a couple families. They had private borders. They were the only place that could really grow tobacco, so their area boomed. And then Acadia, people like to say like, oh, it had wars. It was really terrible. It got genocided by the British, or like they got evicted from the land by the British and everything like that. And it's just like, yeah, that could be a criticism, but I don't think it's necessarily a criticism of libertarian ethics or anything of the sort, or libertarianism in reality. Because yeah, when you have the most dominant global empire versus fucking like little tiny area that is doing doing well, but in no way as great as as great in size or economic output as the British, yeah, you're not going to have any sort of competition there.
I think it's also important to discuss institutions, because we didn't really get into that for most of the episode, but talking about like what sort of control libertarians even have when it comes to institutions, and what sort of control they can achieve. Because, for example, like if you're talking about what libertarianism is in the mainstream, people are going to think what? Cato, reason, right? Things like that, where obviously like we know at this point that those are not helpful to the movement. So it's like, if anything, they're just not good. Yeah. So what sort of things could be done to create these institutions, or sort of like, I don't know if really overtaking is a good strategy.
I'm not too certain. With that, I'd say the Mises Institute is absolutely a godsend. It is like the place to go to learn about like everything in a way that's really digestible. Because I'm not too much of a fan of reading. I'm more a fan of like audiobooks, lectures, essays, everything of the sort. Specifically, what I mean reading Human Action, which is like a huge book, and I've got like a few hours into the audiobook. But outside of that, I would say I don't really know. Like I don't think Tim Cast or like Tim Pool is really a brother in arms, especially his recent takes on like agreeing with Hasan about the Mr. B stuff, where it's just like, yeah, it is really ridiculous how like we can't just like give this to poor people. I listen to that, I'm just like, okay, maybe if you phrase it in a way where it's like it's government's the reason that into the market of healthcare, why cataract surgery and everything like that is so expensive. Okay, maybe you can have a point there, but like the general point of just like the optics of agreeing with Hasan on criticizing Mr. Beast for giving a bunch of like 1,000 people their sight back is really terrible.
Yeah, I think it's horrendous that government involves themselves in healthcare, making it so expensive and creating these barriers for people to get surgeries that they could very well use.
Yeah, exactly. It's
not that hard to say.
Evil, one could say. It's evil, one could say. But what he's doing in the cultural space of taking, in some senses, some losses on some projects. Pop Culture Crisis. I don't really watch the show, but it's related to culture. It doesn't have the sort of like woke agenda. It's interesting. I think it's run by. I know the girl is a Catholic. I forget who.
Mary Morgan and the guy. I don't remember his name.
I don't know. But they aren't necessarily woke, but they aren't necessarily libertarian either. But podcasting is just another form of media, not necessarily an institution, but creating. He's like talking about cultural spaces, like I don't necessarily know, like of a skate shop, but like coffee shops or something of the place where people can meet up. any sort of way to centralize or like decentralized centralization of geographically centralizing some people in a space where they can know each other, meet up, everything like that is a good thing. But doing it decentralized in a way where it's like spread across the United States.
So basically networking.
Yeah, just networking in a different way. There was something else that I was shown recently too, like freedom cells, and it's like hooking up with a couple of not hooking up. God, it is not a swingers thing.
You know, it could be.
It is not a swingers thing.
If you want it to be.
But coalescing with like 5 people or whatever, and you are all experts in different skills, and then like you share those skills together, and you help each other out, connect with other freedom cells. But it's kind of counter economic. It's kind of I'd say agorist, but that the networks are probably a good method or institution to create, but you'd have to raise the profile of them a bit more to really get the libertarians. Because I heard of it once and then never again. I have like the webpage open or something still, but haven't really looked into it because I'm not an expert at anything yet.
Yeah. So with that, I would want to know, lastly, what sort of is the hope here? Like, what are we looking at prospect wise? I know I asked this last time as far as the culture war, but I kind of do want another, just to touch on it again. What would you say based on this and creating culture and all that is the hope in the future for libertarians and, you know, their future generations?
The hope would be that we network together to gather enough libertarians to be able to create narratives, to create culture, to infuse it in the ideas across the general population. Like if there's some libertarian narrative that just like lightly touches upon the ideas and gets people thinking, that is accepted by like the wider culture as like an interesting thing, but kind of small. You have the creation of more libertarians. Anytime you have the creation of more libertarians, you are helping achieve libertarian ends tangentially. And the method of achieving libertarian ends remains varied. There's counter economics, there's a localism. But I would say through whatever means, you definitely want to create culture at the same time as going through those to achieve our ends of desirably private property localities in which people can be free to engage in counter economic action.
Well, with that, you should be inspired. Maybe you're a bit mad, and I'm sure you're a bit traumatized because of what was shown earlier. But with that, you know, I hope this is a good start for those that are looking to create culture within the pro-liberty sphere or libertarian sphere. You can check me out, ahmedmlih.com. Make sure to sign up for my email list. Be sure to check out the rest of the show. We have other episodes. I think the last one Ashton and I did was actually a really good one. And honestly, if you want to see some more of the culture today, what it's like in the woke sphere, we have the woke mindset exposed, in which we react to some TikToks that are, they're not great, but you'll probably have a good time watching it. It's a pretty fun show. Just make sure to check that out. Ashton, you got anything?
Nothing else. I just want to say it is true that we can lose. It is not true that we must lose. And we're going to die trying to win.
Best sign off. All right, guys, make sure to check out the show again. And remember, civil offense is the key to winning. Thank you.